Good morning, good morning, good morning. It is 5:30 in the morning on Friday. 5:30 in the morning on Friday. That means today is the last day for this book. This is the last page in this book. Wow. So, we pulled a cockroach out of the randomogrifier. Now, it's not a real cockroach, and I had to be careful putting this cockroach on the dais, on the stage, because there was a very good chance somebody would take their shoe off and smash my little stage to kill whatever was crawling across it. There's always that chance with these things. So my family, especially my beautiful young bride, does not tolerate the cockroaches at all. She just doesn't do bugs at all. And so there's always that chance that she might have come out here and saw that and just smashed my little table, which, wouldn't have been nice, but it would have made for a good story. Trying to make sure we got room for everything, try to get everything kind of spaced where it should go. Deciding what to leave in, deciding what to leave out, in the composition phase. But true to character, I spent about 2 hours yesterday learning more about cockroaches than I ever really wanted to know. I don't remember ever just one day saying, today I'd like to learn everything there is to know about cockroaches. But here we are. 3 hours of two hours, about 2 hours of documentaries later, and I know more about cockroaches than I ever really wanted to. For instance, I know there are 4,000 species of cockroach, but they have, in 2008 or 2000, I think it was 2018. In 2018, they did the genome thing, and they realized that termites are actually cockroaches also. And so that changes it, because now there are 7,000 species of cockroaches. They have the second highest genome count of any insect. I forget what the highest one was, but it was not cockroaches, surprisingly. And that makes them quite the hardy species, hard to kill, survive in almost any environment. Hard to poison, hard to smash. They can stand weight on their back up to 900 times their body weight. "900 times their body weight." They can squeeze through cracks that are 1/4 of the thickness of their body. Scientists are using them, roboticists are using them as a model to build robots that can go into tight spaces and rescue humans, to try to compress themselves to go into tight spaces. And survive being compressed. And as interesting as those robots were, the thing that was more interesting was seeing them put electronics on an actual cockroach and give it instructions on where to go. They were able to tap into the locomotion of the cockroach. Just like in Fifth Element, they were able to remotely control where that cockroach went, like a little, just like a little remote control bug. That was pretty interesting. Why they would even, what would say, hey, you know what? I bet we could tap into the neurological system of the cockroach. Well, but you can't. Hold my beer, hide and watch. Alright, let's clean up those lines. But yeah, I know more about cockroaches than I wanted to. It was Cockroach Farms that got me, though. That was the one that had me shaking my head, saying, what's wrong with people? It's $1 billion industry in China to grow cockroaches, to raise cockroaches. Billion for the B. $1 billion industry. Because they use cockroaches for animal food. They use cockroaches for medicinal purposes. They use cockroaches as a source of protein. My mom's popped up. She has a valid point in the chat. She's talking about her favorite kind of cockroach, and those are the ones that are lying on the back with their legs up in the air. I think there are probably quite a few people that share your opinion of that. I am not one of those people that are grossed out by the idea of eating cockroaches. The problem with cockroaches, why we are so disgusted by cockroaches, is because the cockroaches themselves are very clean animals as far as animals are concerned. But they like unclean places and unclean things like spoiled milk and beer and rotting meat. But they have 150 something smell receptors, olfactory receptors, and they have 500 something taste receptors, and that makes them have a taste for everything. And we just can't tolerate that. You know, it's not the fact that it walked across our food, it's the fact that it walked through the gutter to get to our food. That's what poses the problem. It's what it tracked onto our food. It's not that the bug itself caused the problem, it's what it walked through to get to us. That's what we can't tolerate. But there's a whole science about eating cockroaches. They're a very abundant food source, especially in the rainforests. All of the small animals, lizards and such, hugely depend on cockroaches. As a food source. Kind of like, we hate them the way we hate mosquitoes and other pests, but destroying them means getting rid of the frogs and lizards. And these things are really the waste management, because they eat all the dead things laying around. They put nitrogen back in the soil. We just don't like them in our house. And on our food. The American cockroach is not native to America. The American cockroach is actually native to Africa. And came to the Americas in the 16th century, in the 1500s, on boats that came from Africa. I will let you draw your own conclusion of what was being traded at the time, but it should be known that they are a global pest because of this. They didn't just infest the Americas. They are on every continent except Antarctica. My mom wants to know if larger varieties are more prominent in coastal areas. Yes, they like the hot, dark, humid places. So a nice Houston grassy area would have been a fantastic place for a cockroach to live and be happy. And then we built our homes here. And to understand, the area we live in was mostly rice fields, because it is that wet and humid here. So yes, to answer your question, the cockroaches do love themselves some dark areas, some dark wet areas, like the coastal areas. But back to the eating of the cockroaches. How are we doing on time? Oh, it's 5:45 already. We got to get a move on. Back to the eating of the cockroaches. That foot is in the wrong place, and I'm not going to do anything about it. I'm just going to live with it. You know, in the 80s, they talked about eating cockroaches, and a lot of us balked at the idea, and then they came back and said nobody's trying to make you eat cockroaches, and then there were all these articles about eating cockroaches. They want you to give up your steaks and eat cockroaches. They're more ethically farmed. That's not going to happen, at least not on Earth. But the question I would put to you is, how, if you're going to colonize Mars, for instance, how are you going to keep cows and chickens on Mars? They use a lot of water. They use a lot of your precious air. And you have very little air to spare. You can't just keep trucking in air just for the cows. So, a sustainable alternative would be cockroaches. Ew. And then they started going into cockroach recipes. Cockroach sushi. Deep fried cockroaches. Said they taste like potato chips. Why not just eat a potato chip? There's no reason to put us through that kind of trauma. No reason at all to put us through that kind of trauma. But it's still a valid question. How are you going to farm on? How are you going to have sustainable food on Mars in your Martian colony if you're not willing to eat cockroaches? And I'll bet if you took a cockroach, powdered it up with some kelp, some kale rather, powdered it up with some kale and some beets, I bet it could be quite tasty. I will likely never know. But you could powder that up. Mix it with some vodka. I would likely never know if that's tasty or not. I mean, it sounds tasty. I ate a dead frog once in the army. Hi, Claudia. My dad's in the chat room saying I ate a dead. It wasn't just random. I'm sorry. My dad's in the chat saying he ate a dead frog once in the army. I've eaten live bugs. We had survival training. I've eaten live bugs. I've had the occasional grasshopper. I've also been riding my motorcycle at 70, 80 miles an hour and flown through some gnats. Get a mouthful of that. Spend the rest of the day picking them out of your beard. But that wasn't on purpose. This is on purpose. I got to start adding some drop shadows in here. They are not, most of them are not as dark as the bug. This is a nice little brown bug. And the fun thing about drawing stuff like this is how do you make it, how do you distinguish between what's shadow and what's antennae? I have a gnat flying around my face right now and I'm about to freak out about it. But I can tell you, like, there was a fly in my coffee the other morning, and there was a time in my life when if I had a fly in my coffee I would just, tolerate it, make some kind of joke about it, carry on. I'm not that person anymore. Now I will do a spit take and go get a fresh cup of coffee in a clean cup. Can't really tell where that shadow, I think that shadow is really only super dark right there. I think everywhere else it is not in contact with the bug. I think it's just right there. So I think everywhere else is fairly light. Because of the bounce light in the shadow. It's touching right here, so it'll have a little darkness right there. Hello, darkness, my old friend. That's not what we should be singing. You know, we should be singing La Cucaracha. La cucaracha, ya no puede caminar. Porque no tiene, porque le faltan las dos patitas detrás. That's what we should be singing. See, this is where the stray lines, it's really important to make sure your stray lines are taken care of, or you will end up shading something that should not be there. Alright, now I think all that's left to do is go through and 555. I thought we were going to do, Mom's in the chat room asking what we decided to do for the next book. I think we decided to go with ink and wash. I think that's an interesting challenge. I'm gonna run with it. I think that's a fairly interesting challenge, so I'm going to run with ink and wash. But do we start the ink and wash tomorrow, or do we take tomorrow to go through and critique what we've done? You don't really learn if you don't stop to critique. You have to stop and look over what you've done, because you can practice every day. But if you keep making the same mistakes in your practice, you'll just cement those ideas. And so it's important to stop and reflect on what you've done. So I mean, that's the real question is, I mean, those are the kinds of things. Do we stop and review? Or do we just drive on? Save the review for another video outside of this. Really push those darks to really get those values down, because it is after 6. Oh my goodness, we got to stop. We have to stop. But I think we're there anyway. What time is it? 6:02. Yeah, we got to stop. 23 May 2025. Not bad for a 5:30 in the morning sketch. I think he'd make a pretty good little painting. I think he'd be fun to... Oh, you know what? I left off that little tail bob right there. I think he'd be fun to put on a trading card and send to Dee Dee. I stopped into Inkwell, Dee Dee's live stream the other day. Saw a bunch of old friends, Janet Merle, Boudreaux. She still has the little astronaut painting that she bought from me. She whipped it out and showed it to everybody. How cool is that? Alright, we're calling it. I have to stop. She says, Claudia says this is a 6 out of 10 because of the subject. She's not giving me high marks today because of what it is. Claudia, were you here for the discussion about eating them and the Chinese farms? You know what? That's not right. You can tell I moved around. It's pretty obvious I moved around while I was trying to get a better look at what those structures were. But that's what we ended up with. You can tell I changed perspective a couple of times that I should not have. But She's been here from the beginning, but she was driving her car. Oh, great. I'll be singing that all day. Baby, you can drive my car. Da, na, 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 na. Yes, I'm gonna be a star. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for joining me. You know I look forward to this every day. Claudia, are you watching me while driving the car? I mean, that doesn't sound safe. But you guys have a great day. We'll see you tomorrow. Same Artistic Biker time, same Artistic Biker channel. And then we dance. We dance until somebody says they see me dancing. That way I know that the lag has caught up with the stream, and I